And let's begin with a word of prayer. Father, how grateful we are to be in this place today, to have the opportunity, Father, to study your word. Help us, Father, to be listen to what you have to say and be obedient. For Christ's sake, I pray. Amen. Our title to the lesson is Fully Committed today. Do all of you respond to commands? If you do, raise your right hand. No, your right hand, Art.
I can't.
That's the reason I asked this question. I wanted to see if you could raise your right hand. Okay, but it has to do with commands, of course. I guess it's a problem, but I began to think this week about the book of Deuteronomy. It reminded me of the children wandering in the wilderness, and when they would go around, we've said, before, they'd say, "Well, I think I've seen this before," because they didn't have much space, and so they wandered a lot. And they had to go by the same rock over and over again. Well, the same thing is got one to Jenny to let in. So, uh, uh, and so I was wondering, perhaps if Moses had Alzheimer's, uh, and because I think I've heard this before. What we're studying, I think this is the fifth lesson where we basically heard the same message. Now, have you heard it? Shema, hear, O Israel. And of course, repetition is a part of the Hebrew uh, the way Hebrews do the things to remind us. But throughout the Old Testament, over and again, we hear the same message. And the question is, are we fully committed? Is the title of our lesson. Believers. Well, Johnny and I are on the same page. We understand. uh, Believers are to be characterized by a wholehearted commitment to God. Years ago, I heard about a man who said he didn't believe that a boat could float and that he could float in the boat. And so a man finally convinced him to get in the boat and go out with him one day. And he did, and he went out successfully and got back. And after he got back on land, he asked the man, "I thought you said that you did not think a boat could hold you up." He said, "Well, I didn't put down all my weight while we were out." Well, if we are going to be fully committed, we're going to have to put down all of our weight. I wrote a sort of a tongue-in-cheek, or I should say, I provided a tongue-in-cheek cheek message, and to what Worlene is going to read. She's going to read the text for today from the Sand Hill version of the Old Testament. I doubt that you've heard of it before, and it's a text that was discovered in 1951 in Sand Hill, Georgia. There are a bunch of us boys that were out playing in the schoolyard, and we were throwing rocks when we were not supposed to be throwing rocks. And one rock hit a jug out in the stump of the tree, and we went over and we found this text that was stuck in the tree there at Sand Hill Elementary School. And so this is how it's been preserved, and this is the text for the text that you might want to listen to. So go ahead.
And it came to pass, after 40 long, dusty years of traveling, fussing, and eating manna, until everybody was begging for fried chicken, that the Lord said unto Moses, Climb yonder hill, son, and take a look. There's the promised land. And Moses climbed, huffing and puffing, leaning on that stick he'd been toting since the Red Sea days, muttering under his breath, Lord, I sure do hope you ain't joking about this one. And when he got to the top of Mount Nebo, he shaded his eyes, looked across the Jordan, and saw it, green as grandma's quilt and flowing with milk, honey, and probably a few good catfish holes. Then the Lord said, Now, Moses, you may look upon it, but you ain't going in. And Moses said, Well, now, Lord, that don't seem exactly fair. I've led these stiff-necked folks through frogs, snakes, and back talk for 40 years, and you're telling me I can't even set one sandal on that good grass, maybe just a toe? And the Lord said, Patient as ever, Moses, son, we done talked about this. And Moses said, Yes, Lord, but talking is kind of what I do best. At least it is now. Funny how a man who once said he couldn't talk has been jawing for 40 years straight. And the Lord said, Ain't that the truth? Then Moses lifted his hand, pointed toward Canaan, and hollered down to Joshua, Well, you're up next, boy. Keep 'em moving and don't let 'em start a committee or you'll be out there another 40 years.
You've probably not heard that version before.
And when Moses had said all that, he looked toward heaven and said, Lord, I done my best, even when I didn't think I could. Now, if you don't mind, I'll just rest these old bones. And the Lord smiled and said, Come on home, my talkative servant. You've earned your peace. And it was written that Moses, the man who once claimed he couldn't speak, went out talking, telling stories all the way up Glory Road. And the angels said they ain't had a quiet moment since.
Well, it's interesting, though, that when Moses was called, standing there in front of the burning bush, what did he say? When God said, I've called you, what did he say? Right. He said, Lord, I don't know how to speak. I've discovered that the two times that people most have an interest in what you say is first when you're born. How many parents and grandparents have stood in front of their children saying, say Papa, or Pappy, or Mama, or Granny, just trying to get them to say that, the first word. And the second is whenever you're dying, somebody always wants to know what the last word was. I had a woman to call me over to the bedside at the time she was dying, and she whispered, and I said, I wanted to hear what she had to say. And she said, Would you step back off of my oxygen line? But those are the two times in life that people seem to want to know what you have to say. Well, the book of Deuteronomy to me of course, the book itself means the second reading of the law. And we hear over and over most of the things that we'll hear today. And of course, our lesson first begins with the idea of a command. And of course, we know that we have in our system of government, in our almost everything, there is a chain of command. And of course, in recent days, we had people suggesting that we break that chain of command. Well, we know if we break the chain of command, that things seem to fall apart. Well, in the first section, we've been given a chain of command. Someone read for us in a better version of the text, the verses from 11 through 14 of Deuteronomy 30, which deals with the command section.
This command that I give you today is certainly not too difficult or beyond your reach. It is not in heaven, so that you have to ask, who will go up to heaven? Get it for us and proclaim it to to us so that we may follow it. And it is not across the sea, so that you have to ask, who across the sea hid it from us and proclaim it to us so that we may follow it. But the message is very near you, in your mouth, in your heart, so that you may follow it.
God gives what blessings to us who follow Him, and cursings upon those who disobey Him. He in this passage we can liken this to what Jesus said about there is a broad way and there is a narrow way. And he in here says that if you follow my commands, then you're going to be blessed. But in the text itself, it shows the very text itself says that this is not rocket science. It is not something beyond your reach or that is too difficult. Even Jesus said of us who follow him, he likened following him unto what? A child. A child ought to be able to understand what we tell them about Christ and following him and being obedient to him. What did you tell your children and what do you tell your grandchildren when you if they got to learn to obey you? And I always told my children and is that if it's important to do what I say because there are certain dangers that would come and you don't have time to think. All that you have time to do is to respond, to be obedient to that, not necessarily because it is a command, but because it's necessary to prevent danger coming to you. Well, God loves us. If you want to find a good rendition of this, Tim Keller, who is, of course, passed away, I heard him teach this, and he had one of the most beautiful expositions of this text as he talked about the importance of us obeying commands. He says it's not beyond the reach. It's not in heaven where you have to go to heaven to find it. It's not across the sea where you'll have to send someone across the sea to find it. But where does he say that it is that our pastor said it this morning? Where did he say that his command resides? In our heart, in mouth, and in our heart. And Kim Keller did a beautiful job of describing how close God's commands is. And he even went on to say and to talk about how even if we did not know the Word of God, that God has created us in such a way that even by nature itself and what God has created, if we worship the Creator, there's so much about nature that leads us to understand there's a greater power beyond that. And right, and I had a time to talk a little bit about that this morning. When we talk about being fully committed, I'm sure you have heard this before. That is, that the chicken says, "Let's serve the farmer breakfast, egg and bacon," and the pig replies, he's talking to the pig, "Well, for you that's involvement, but for me that's commitment." And the moral there is, true commitment requires more than just a contribution. It costs something. Well, we are called then to move from hearing the command is something we hear. Then we move from that where we are called upon to make a commitment. Someone read for us 15 through 18 of Deuteronomy 30.
See, today I have set before your life and prosperity, death and adversary. For I am commanding you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways and to keep his commandments, statutes, and ordinances, so that you may live and multiply, and the Lord your God may bless you in the land you are entering to possess. But if your heart turns away and you do not listen, and you are led astray to bow and worship to other gods and serve them, I tell you today that you will certainly perish, and I will not prolong your days in the land you are entering to possess across the Jordan.
The last part, which James will handle next week as we continue this, the last, is it next week? Yeah, next week. These are the last words of Moses to the people, recognizing that he will not go into the promised land. And he says, now I want you to make a commitment to that. The commitment is, this is what I've made available for you. Life and death, life and death are in one place, but he says life and prosperity. What have we known about being obedient to God? When we are obedient to God, what does He do for us? Blesses. Yeah, y'all know the answers. It's not. I'm not gonna grade. No rocket science. That's right. It's not. But it is that He blesses us, makes us prosper. But then we're faced with if we are disobedient, we have death and adversity. And he says, I'm commanding you to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, statutes, and ordinances, so that you may live and multiply, and the Lord your God may bless you in the land you are entering to possess. They've not gone in yet. They've been through 40 years of wandering, still disobedient to God. He says, you're going to have the opportunity of your life. But if you don't do what I say, it's all going to be the same results. It doesn't make any difference what level of life we're living. If we aren't obedient to God, whatever level that is, we're going to find that we have the same results. If we allow things other than God to come in, it destroys and takes away from Him, and it leads us away. Over and again in the Old Testament, you know the stories of men who were faithful to God. They began to worship false idols, etc. And we know that even in our day, many men who have done what I do, it's amazing and it's really sad. The number have fallen because they have disobeyed God. So it takes a commitment on our part. You may have heard about the fisherman who went out to fish one day, and this guy was known. He would not carry. He didn't carry a rod and reel. Didn't take a bait box, but always came back with a fish filling his boat. And the ranger was watching him and decided one day that he would tag along. He couldn't figure it out. So he said, I want to go with you fishing today. He said, good. And the ranger brought his bait, rod and reel. He got in the boat, went out, and he was about to bait his hook. And he noticed that the fisherman that he was watching had a bag. And so the man reached into the bag. He took his cigarette lighter, he lit some dynamite, threw it into the creek, and huh?
floated up.
They did, yeah, after a while they did float up. But before that, Art, the ranger said to the man, that's illegal. I'm going to make you an example. So I'm going to write you a ticket. At which time the fisherman just simply lit another dynamite, gave it to him, and said, "Are you going to bait? Are you going to bait? Are you going to fish?" Well, he had to make a commitment at that time what he was going to do, and of course he was a part of the same process. Then the last thing we see is the call to action, which is verses 19 through 20. Someone read those two verses for us.
I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you today that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curse. Choose life so that you and your descendants may live. Love the Lord your God, obey him, and remain faithful to him, for he is your life, and he will prolong your days as you live in the land the Lord swore to give to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Now, that is the challenge for us, then, to accept the command and make the commitment. The challenge for us then is to take that and to live it out in our lives. And of course, we know that one of the things in the Old Testament that they always did at the gate, what was there at the gate? When at the gate of whatever city, that's where business was conducted. And when business was conducted there, what was the reason they conducted it at the front gate? That's where the people gathered. That's where they made decisions, and there were there were those there who could bear witness to what was taking place. And so he says, I've called both heaven and earth to bear witness today about what I've done. The same thing that Jesus says when there's a narrow gate, there's a broad gate, there's a gate that leads to life, there's a gate that leads to death, there's a blessing and curse. Now, we're going to be studying Matthew in our next two quarters, the whole book of Matthew. And one of the things in the book of Matthew is that Matthew is speaking to the Jews and makes some pretty choice words. And he says, "Woe unto you." Well, in the New Testament, the curse was the woe. So there's a connection there. There's a lot of the book of Deuteronomy that is quoted in the book of Matthew. He says you've got a decision to make. And if you want to be blessed, you choose life. And he says, love God, obey him, and be faithful to him. And that will prolong your days and will give you life. There's a passage of scripture that we quote that says that we are to, whatever we say if it's the Lord's will. That's why I like to pray the prayer that never fails, which is the Lord's Prayer, thy will be done. But there was this is more ancient than I thought it was. It's a story I've told before, but I thought it was a Western story, but it happens to be a story that comes from the Far East. And he said there was a place, very quiet place, where a family lived, and they had a nice place, a strong place, a dependable horse. Well, one day that horse, which was the pride of the farm, vanished. And the next morning when it came back, the neighbors were just rejoiced when they found out that that the horse came back bringing a herd or is that what you say, horses, bunch of horses, and everybody was happy. They brought all the horses back. And someone said about the farmer losing the horse, what terrible luck. But then when the horses came back with a herd of horses, it said, well, what terrible luck. And the farmer folded his hands and simply said, maybe. The next afternoon, the missing horses came back, as I mentioned, and there was this herd of the horses, and the farmer said, somebody said, how wonderful. And the farmer said, maybe. And they began to train the horses, and the man was bucked off the horses, and somebody said, what terrible luck. And the farmer said, maybe. A week later, soldiers came to the village and they were looking for young men to go into the military. This young man had broken his leg. And somebody said, what incredible good fortune. And the farmer said softly, maybe. The story goes that the farmer never judged the events too quickly. He understood what his neighbors did not, that the twists and turns that come in our life are the plans of God that unfold in ways a disaster may come today, and following that disaster may be a blessing, but we're not always certain if that is the greatest thing possible in our life. And so we too need to join and say, maybe, perhaps, it's good. From this lesson, we ought to take from it that we can trust God to give us the ability to obey His commands. People must choose whether to follow God. Our desire to follow God influences our descendants' choices to do the same. Recently, I've gotten acquainted with what most of you have known for a long time. It is about the story of the Woodlawn Sioux. It's been a very influential book for me in the last month. And I was reading about Tony Nathan this week. He's got a book called Touchdown Tony. And it's an amazing story of good that came out of a difficult season of life. And what is so important is it involves faith and what God was able to do through those events of the racial struggle and crisis at the time. But there were a lot of young men who came to Christ out of that whole period who today are very successful. And most of the ones I've heard from all say and give credit to what God was doing at that time. And people who are committed to God, it's amazing how God is able to use them. And at the heart of the book, it's just not about touchdowns. It's about transformation. Nathan reflects on how God guided his steps from a scared young man facing hate to a leader using his platform for good. His story is a testimony of how faith, forgiveness, and perseverance can turn trials into triumphs. And this lesson today, God is saying, if we will if we will hear His command, and if we will then make a commitment to that He will bring good to your life and mine. And over and again, we've heard this story, and we hear it in the New Testament. And when you study the book of Matthew, we'll see all of that fleshed out. I want to give you a chance to respond first to the whole series that we're done and finish next week. because in the next 2 weeks, I think we'll not have the small groups. Is that right?
That's during Christmas.
Huh?
That's during Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's this year too. Okay.
Christmas next week.
Okay.
I have a question, David.
Okay.
Is it wrong to feel sorry for Moses because he never did get to go? I mean,
Choices have consequences, and Moses discovered, murdering someone, not disobeying God. That was the what God imposed on him. I understand what you're saying. I think that just what I think about it. That reveals your heart.
is what?
It reveals your heart.
Yes, I felt sorry for him.
Yeah.
The simple reason he had to carry those people all over the place for 40 years.
But he got to go to his heavenly promised land.
Oh, yes, he got to go to heaven.
Yeah, yeah.
That was worth the trip.
Right, but
was the long trip worth it.
Right, exactly. But haven't you done, been a part of things in your life that you were part of the process, but you never saw the completion of it?
Yes.
So that I think is for all of us. I've been right now. There's something happening in the church. Well, two things happen. One church is falling apart, and one's accelerating. That still blessed my life. I wasn't a part of this the growth of the church like it is now, but I was a part of that process, and I reveled in it.
Well, I will say my first word was not mama or daddy. It was fried chicken.
you like that interpretation better? Translation should say. Anybody else with a word thought about how this unfolds?
Hey, JW, I do. Did Moses actually see God face to face? I mean, we always hear that nobody saw the face of God, but it sounds like that they.
Tim Keller, of course, it does a beautiful thing about that, about when God shielded. Who was he shielded in the cave? But right, so you're right. Who was that? Was that? Yeah. Uh, I can't answer that question, but I don't think he probably did see. I don't know that a person could possibly. Yeah.
He saw the burning bush, right?
Right.
Take your sandals off, you're on the holy ground.
Right.
You're in the presence. When he came off the mountain, did I not read somewhere in the Bible that his face was aglow because he was near God?
Well, yeah, right. Even the statues or busts of Moses. There is if you've read that and seen those statues, you might have seen those that had the horns on Moses. Well, that's because the halo and the horns, somebody misinterpreted the words in translation, and that's how that came to be, about the glow of the halo. The only reason I know that the pastor before me was a man who knew about things, and he left Moses sitting in my office, and there was horns on him, and I said, well, one day I was listening to one of my sermons, I went to sleep, and I looked, I thought it was Willie.